Okay, folk, we're ready to make a start to our meeting. We'll have a quorum here, so we'll hammer on with the meeting today. We have briefings today from colleges NI on hardship funds and for the education budget cuts, a briefing from NUS USA on hardship funds, a briefing from the department officials on the disability employment strategy, and a briefing from Steps to Success contractor REIT and partnership. I do have apologies from Robin Swan and Alan Lowe. Any other apologies? No further apologies. On the issue of chairperson's business, there was a dinner here on Friday night in relation to Belfast Met, RC 2020, and there were a number of folk here from Australia and America and all over the place who were over for a conference. They were in at the dinner, and I did come and attend that dinner, and they were all very upbeat about the services that we provide here within the FE colleges, and simply just what we provide and the programmes that we provide and that type of thing. And they are linking up with a number of the colleges here now in order to take back some of the learning that we have here back to their own areas. So it seemed to be very, very well worthwhile, and they were very positive as to what we're doing here. So at page 6 of your pack, we have the draft minutes of the meeting. And can I ask, are you agreed on those minutes?
Very good.
All agreed?
Good.
Okay, I'll sign them off. Okay. Page 14 of your pack, we have the action points from the meeting on the 8th of October. And if anyone has any issues to raise in them, do so now, or else we'll take agreement on them. Everyone agreed? In correspondence at page 19 and table forward programme then? Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. You'll get the forward programme on page 19, is it?
Page 42.
Page 42 of your pack.
Oh, I'm doing it in the wrong order.
If you take a look at the forward programme to see if you're content with it, as it's in your pack.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed on it?
Yeah.
Okay. You're okay.
Confusing.
Right, I return now to correspondence. At page 22, correspondence from First Source Solutions offering the committee to hold a meeting at their premises at Springtown Business Park Centre.
But you couldn't refuse that.
Yeah. Members agreed that we leave it with the committee clerk to sort that out for us at some stage. Again, at page 23, there's a memo from the Committee for Finance and Personnel regarding a review of the operation of the Barnett formula, which really comes out to all committees. Members happy with that, or they've seen it anyway? Anyone want to make any reference to it?
Yeah, well, apart from the fact on the wee link for the evidence sessions, it doesn't work, but you'll have to go into that particular committee to actually get the evidence sessions on that.
Want me to send you a proper link?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Page 25, you have a departmental correspondence regarding the October monitoring round, and I think that's something maybe the committee had asked for. Again, page 35, Stranmillis University College response regarding the college's consultation with staff, and again that was something the committee, as far as I'm aware, had asked for as well. Any comments on that?
We were trying to ascertain, given the presentation by the chair of Stranmillis, that he eventually, I think, withdrew some of the comments because they were of a personal nature. We were trying to determine, I'm just winging it to try and see where it is. Was there any correspondence coming back separate to what he had said that he was speaking? He was probed on this. Was he speaking for the school, given the indifference as it was in Stranmillis previously, Chair? I still haven't found it.
That correspondence is page 35 of your pack.
Got it now.
And the next correspondence, which is from UCA.
Yeah, and again, there's further correspondence at page 38 of your pack from the University and College Union's response regarding Stanmillis University College view on the initial teacher training infrastructure. So we'll have those two items that the committee had asked for. If you want further time to look at them, we can put them onto next week's agenda again.
No, could we write again asking, was there any formal submissions made by either the trade union or senior managers in respect of this consultation?
Okay.
In respect of the report rather than the consultation.
So the consultation that they said it was taking place in the college? Their own consultation?
So any formal.
Representations that they had received from either senior managers or from the trade union. Is the trade union one on?
But the trade union said they haven't.
Then I hadn't got any.
Oh, they were saying they were not
It
consulted.
was not consulted with.
Yeah.
Page 37.
Yeah, I've got it.
So just senior managers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Bronwyn, did you want to?
Yes.
Okay. Happy with that then, folks? Right. Page 39 of your pack, there's one invitation to the launch of the Chief Inspector's Report 2012-2014. I'm sure that's open for all members of the committee if you wish to attend that. And again, actions are suggested, agreed unless indications to the contrary. I think everyone's agreed on it. And the draft forward works programme, would we have covered that? Yeah. Now into our briefing from Colleges NI. Hardship funds and further education budget cuts. This is going to be Hansarded, so I would remind you to keep your devices all switched off or on silent. At page 45, if you have your briefing papers on the hardship fund. At page 47, the budget cuts to further education. At page 50, you have the briefing from the Students' Hardship Fund, and at page 56, you have the briefing on the Students' Support Fund and further education and higher education. And I want to welcome Mr. Gerald Campbell, Chief Executive, Ms. Karen Lennon, Public Policy and Public Affairs Manager, and Mr. Jasper McKinney, Assistant Director of Student Services. You're very welcome, folks. We do have your correspondence in the pack, and we'll give you up to 10 minutes to give us your presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good morning members of the committee as well. Delighted to be back again, and thank you very much for the opportunity not only to come back and update yourselves in relation to the hardship funds, but also to have that discussion about the budget cuts coming down for 2015-16. We'll probably not need the 10 minutes for the update on the hardship funds. I think we'll try and concise that with 5 minutes. I'm going to ask Karen, Chair, to lead in that, and then Jasper to come in and open that to any questions from the committee, if that's it. Karen?
Okay. Given the cohort of learners across our 6 regional FE colleges, promoting forms of financial support is very important, especially as the sector attracts 43% of our learners from the most deprived wards in Northern Ireland. Despite this, the sector has a retention rate of 89% and an achievement rate of 87%. And it should be noted that retention rates across the sector have been increasing year on year in the last 3 years. When looking at hardship fund allocation and spend, I think we need to consider the full picture when looking at forms of financial support. It is true there has been a £1.3 million reduction in hardship fund allocations to the colleges over the period 2009-10 up to 2014-15. However, this needs to be considered within the wider context. During that same period, the amount of money available per year through the FE wards has increased by £2 million. Furthermore, when we look at the two schemes combined, that is the FE wards and the hardship funds, there has been a net increase during that period of 0.7 million. So that's an increase from 7.3 million back in 2009-10 to £8 million currently available in this academic year. This increase, it should be noted, does not reflect other sources of student support that are available for our students. This includes funds such as education maintenance allowance, childcare support through Care to Learn, as well as additional support fund which supports students with learning difficulties or disabilities. Taking the hardship funds in isolation, this fund is very much a demand-led fund, and there are instances where the demand has increased supply, and as such DALE has made increased allocations within each of the academic years. Over the last 3 years, in terms of the total number of applications to the hardship funds, there have been over 7,500 applications for funding across the 6 colleges. And in terms of the acceptance rate, 82% of students who have applied for hardship funds have been eligible and have received funding. This has resulted in 6,283 awards being made over that 3-year period, and this is broken down in just over 1,800 awards in 2011-12, just over 2,000 in 2012-13, and in the last academic year there were 2,294 awards made. We're not aware of any student having been eligible for hardship funds and being rejected because of the lack of money. The current budget cuts, particularly from next year onwards, will have negative consequences across the colleges in terms of their ability to support and reach out to learners right across local communities, especially those most vulnerable. And as a sector, we will strive to ensure that our services to learners is protected, especially as we're targeting the most hard-to-reach individuals, and we will ensure that all forms of financial support are adequately promoted to them. I'll now pass over to Jasper to cover a few points from a college perspective in terms of how each of the individual colleges promote the funds and what happens when a student is rejected for funding. Jasper.
Thank you. In terms of promotion, I'm delighted to say that since the NUS-USI have raised this issue, the college have continued in sharing best practice around publicity. This has included making links to financial support on each of the college's websites more prominent. That's 1 to 3 clicks to get to the information, as well as the links with our stakeholders and our other organisations through colleges NI and so on. I am aware also that the NUS have started some work on updating the information they provide in student finance support, and the colleges would welcome this development and support that. To summarise the main ways in which the colleges promote hardships, first of all, we take the different stages of the student journey: pre-application, application, pre-enrolment, enrolment and during the course. So at each of those points we try to promote through the following methods. The second element is the main channels for promoting hardship to students and prospective students and stakeholders. These include printed materials through prospectus, induction programmes, handouts, flyers, even pop-up information points in some shopping centres in different parts of the college. So we're trying at every angle at different points to make sure we communicate the information to students. Plasma screens, social media, online web links. Verbal updates then are given by the student services teams at each college at open days, open evenings, freshers' fairs, and during individual support interviews and class talks. So again, we're proactively going out and getting that information out to our learners. The colleges gather feedback on how to improve their communications via our student councils. That gives class representatives an opportunity to come back, feedback to us on how we might improve things, along with ETI and QAA feedback. This has not indicated any issues in relation to providing the information or supporting the applications to hardship through the recent inspection round. In terms of the main reasons for students being rejected, the 2 main reasons are, firstly, students do not meet the eligibility criteria. It should be noted that a high proportion of these applicants have been successful in gaining funds from other sources, and they have been signposted to EMA, FA Award and HE Finance support. The colleges also signpost students to charities, trusts, St Vincent de Paul, Lions Clubs, bursaries and the Citizens Advice Bureau to ensure that if they're not fitting the criteria that they get support from other, are signposted to other services. Secondly, students not making academic progress or repeating courses linked to the criteria and the circular. However, discretion is used in relation to reskilling. For example, where a student is moving from construction to a career in IT because of the downturn recently, we would support that student to retrain. There's no evidence to say that there have been any applications rejected due to lack of hardship funds. When it comes to applying for the funds, the student services staff at the colleges provide application support evidence checks prior to the approval process, which has substantially reduced the number of rejections and appeals and gives an opportunity to signpost at that point. So there are less appeals due to lack of evidence or failure to meet criteria. Staff have also checked that students have exhausted all other sources of funds in advance of submitting their application to the Hardship Fund. There are a limited number of students who indicate financial hardship as a reason for their leaving a course. They are given details of other sources of funding at pre-exit interventions and exit interviews. The evidence is that most cases it is other personal factors that have impacted on decisions to leave a course. I now hand over to the Chair of the Committee for questions.
Okay, we'll open for questions on this matter. Of the 20% or near enough 20% who apply for hardship funds and don't get it because they're not eligible, how many of them then, or what percentage of those, opt out of the education system?
I checked in some of the colleges, and in our own college, my own college, it was 1%. So it was very few.
Yeah, sure, very minimal. Okay. Matt?
Thanks, Chair. You're very welcome this morning. I suppose we could only but acknowledge the tremendous event in the Long Gallery yesterday, and certainly there was a number of my own constituency who were giving good testimony, not just in the performance levels, but also on the access to courses that enable them to secure good, secure employment opportunities. So well done. Following on from the Chair's point on the hardship money, can you give us a walk through what the main test would be to access that money?
Yes.
In terms of eligibility checks, criteria.
Yeah, we would look at household income and personal situation, and then we do a monthly a finance check as well, so that they can demonstrate if there is hardship there in the sense of their outgoings and their incomes. And we would take them through that in before the application would go through. That would all be assessed by our student services advisors, so that really they're providing all the evidence of hardship at that time of application.
Would it be based also on charitable income?
Yes.
So
if they're in the parental home, it's a household income.
Even though they may not be a dependent, but it could be somebody.
They can state whether they're independent and claim that if they've been working for a number of years to the criteria there.
So, for example, would it be fair to say that the passport to the hardship money could be parents who are on income support or family credit or other element? Would that be the passport?
Yeah.
So how would you evolve then somebody who, for example, presented who are estranged from their families? How is that determined?
We would look at that through some of our stakeholders. We work very closely with 16+ teams and the LAC teams, for example, for care leavers. And we would, through our accreditation through Buttle UK and our ongoing services there, try, for example, if they hadn't the evidence, we would really review that individually with the social work team and support them to progress to get that support. And again, in the timescale, if they needed emergency support, there is a facility to put in emergency funding until their application would be processed. So they're not, really we don't want them to withdraw in the period of time where the process has to go through. So we do emergency payments as well.
Chair, just another one on the hardship. In terms of, I accept your point that any application that's presented, you don't have evidence of anyone actually being refused. What is the justification in North West College then for setting up a food bank when they're telling us that there is serious exceptional circumstances there where young students are under enormous financial pressure?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They seem to be the only college that has had that link with food banks to date. And I know there have been other extenuating circumstances in relation to the finance there, but the way that the college manage and facilitate the criteria from the actual circular is determined individually by each college. So we haven't, in the 5 other colleges, had that scenario.
Well, we might find it this afternoon. We can ask them when we're meeting them at Farmley.
Yes, Pat, if I just add there, yes, I know when that news story was out, I did contact the colleges, and I'm not aware of food banks in any of the other colleges. And I do think that the impression from the North West is that was just the compassion of the staff reaching out to help those students. And I think the numbers were very minimalistic when you look at the number of students who were actually accessing that.
Yeah. Just one final question. I suppose at a later stage we'll find out of job losses or the effect on the key elements of the department, spend and needs and youth training. We had information last week from one of those making presentation on university, the cost per student of university. And certainly the figures coming out now are very alarming, that a student, a third level education in England, Scotland, Wales, is probably getting a subvention to the universities of either up 1,000 to 2,500 per student, and more than a student in Northern Ireland. Is there any figures of a similar nature for Northern Ireland on further education? Are we below par in terms of other colleges that do the models that you're doing in England, Wales or Scotland?
Maybe just clarify, Pat, so you're looking us to see, is there comparative figures for Northern Ireland then?
Yes. Are we on equal par with other colleges of a similar nature in England and Wales? Because the universities are very clear. Richard Barnett, Chair, you can recall, that was a very strong point, that we're the poor relation here, upwards of 2,500 a year, and Queen's have said it repeatedly as well, that we're the poor relation.
I think certainly, Pat, in terms of comparing that against counterparts in GB, we'll certainly get the information and we'll be more than happy to bring that back to the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, Alistair.
It's not really a question, it's 3 points I think jump out at you. First of all, that there's been an increase in terms of financial support for students, that nobody's been turned down, and the retention rate, which is continually going up. So it wouldn't suggest to me that this is a serious problem. And I think actually the ministerial briefing and the debate we had in the Chamber has actually resolved this issue. So I think it's useful we've maybe got the information from the colleges themselves, but I really think that the retention rate is the one that jumps out at you. And if there was a serious issue here, you would expect the retention rate to be going down, and it hasn't. So.
Yes, and if it is to add, Alistair, I know that was retention rate was one of the points that was raised in one of the earlier debates at the Assembly, and that's something that I looked into and can confirm they have increased year on year.
Okay, no other indications. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Phil.
I thought that would have been what we'd be looking in. Can I seek clarification in terms of the promotion of the fund? Is there any efforts being made in any of the colleges to wind down the promotion of the fund as the amount of money available being reduced towards the end of the year?
No, because there are 3 closing points through the year, so that you have to actually retain some of your fund to ensure that people who maybe turn 18 at later in the year can be facilitated and supported through the fund once they're eligible to apply. So you're trying to balance. Also, we're monitoring attendance as we go through the year, and if somebody's attendance or somebody withdraws for other reasons, they're paid in stages, so therefore their fund would come back into the fund so that we have enough funds towards the end of the year. So there shouldn't be any lowering of promotion at any stage in the year.
Can you explain to me how the colleges promote the fund within the college to the students then?
Yeah, as I said in the earlier bit, we would do, from the point of even pre-application, we have all the information on our website. We have information in the prospectus, all our detailed documentation. Then we do that again at pre-enrolment advice sessions, and we detail that in student talks at those events. They're like the interviews for application. Then again at enrolment, when the students come in to register in August, we'll emphasise again have they applied for their FE award or their equivalent funding support. And then we promote we have to promote the hardship in conjunction with all our finance services as directed in the circular. So we have to have a consistent approach. It can't be isolated out to be promoted on its own.
And can I maybe just add a wee point there as well, Chair? When this story hit the news, we did look across all of the colleges in terms of how they promote the hardship funds on their website, and Jasper and all his colleagues across the colleges have actually made the process much simpler. So if you go onto a college website now to find information about the hardship funds, you can get right to it within 2 or 3 clicks. So we have taken that on board and shared that best practice across the colleges.
Okay, and how long does it generally take from the start of an application till a successful student receives money?
We give a 6-week period there. However, we do emergency payments if there's disclosed hardship at the point of application. We can do an emergency cheque payment within a matter of days. We've done that.
And have you, I presume you know the figures on those to hand?
We have. Again, I haven't the figures here, but we can get the figures on
Can you
those.
give me those figures for the colleges? In terms of the fact that this is a demand-led scheme, I do think it's important to welcome the overall increase in financial support, but the principal problem here seems to be the lack of consultation with student union representatives, and that's regrettable, and hopefully it's something that we'll all learn from. But you used a figure of a dropout rate of 1% in response to a question from Tom, was it?
Yes.
Was that 1% of all students drop out?
No, that was in terms, I think Jasper was referring to, I had said that we were talking about the number of students
I was
who
using the
leave a
information
course.
from one college at
Yes.
that point, and that was from the withdrawals, only 1% of, it was 500 withdrawals, 1% indicated that it was because of financial.
Yeah.
But even at that point, it was, they were referred and given information about other sources at those exit interviews. So they're still given advice on citizen advice, other funding, because they may have extensive financial issues that were not related to their studies.
But have you any information as to what percentage or what quantity of students who were turned down for financial support then dropped out? Is that something you could calculate?
The number that were turned down, and then, yes, there would be minimal evidence of that. I know certainly in my own college, but I know speaking to, I phoned all the, spoke to all the colleges, very minimal in Northern and some of the other colleges. Now, Belfast might be slightly higher, but certainly in Northern ourselves, there wasn't indication from Southwest or from CERC either.
But the research paper we've been given today, which is very helpful from the Assembly research staff, says that there's varying rates of applications across all of the colleges. In the North West College, it's about 3%, and in CERC it's 0.57%. So there is a variation in different places. But those figures take into account all students, but only people over 18 can apply for the hardship fund. Is it possible to get a breakdown of figures for students over 18 who apply for these funds, as opposed to a percentage of all figures someone can't apply?
I think in our response, in terms of the issues you've raised, Phil, and the other response I gave about 5 minutes ago, we'll give a comprehensive response back to yourselves, indicating the additional clarity on the points that you've made. Yeah.
And finally, in terms of the move from putting money into the student hardship fund into the further education awards, which, from the bigger picture makes sense, trying to get people money across the year and not in terms of and trying to reduce crisis payments and things like that. Is it a problem that the qualifying period for the hardship fund is 18, but the qualifying age for the further education award is 19? Is that something that has posed a problem for students?
No, because students would retain their EMA further, so it sort of balances in, and we can top up the EMA with the hardship fund.
Okay.
So there's, it's the balance there. So you're trying to give them the balance of support through.
Okay. And
they could still be on EMA.
Yeah.
Phil, you're going to have to wind up now.
That's my finish. Was finished.
Time's
Any
running
question,
on.
Tom?
Okay, run one.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Can I go in and start asking questions on the cuts? Or
No,
is it
because
sort of-
we're going to get a quick overview as to what the cuts means from the
Well, then
their point of view, and then you can
just
come
keep
in
me on
then.
the list then.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, we'll ask you to give us a brief overview as to what this means for the colleges, and then we'll open it again for questions.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, the proposed cuts are unprecedented. I think we would all agree around the table this morning next year for 2015-16. At this stage, colleges are working individually but also on a collective sectoral basis to identify where cuts of a level of 15% can be made within the colleges. And really the opportunity this morning come along here is to give an update to the committee on the impact that may have across the colleges. And 3 particular areas I just want to briefly focus on. One is the provision of learning to learners right across the country, because cuts at that level will have a devastating effect on the amount of provision that colleges provide. Colleges currently would be a one-stop shop providing entry-level right through to foundation and honours degree level provision. Pat referenced the higher education event we had in the Long Gallery yesterday, kindly sponsored by this committee. But 70% of the provision in colleges is at level 2 and below. So choices will have to be made by colleges. Where do we make the cuts in provision? The knock-on effect from that there will obviously then be in terms of staffing numbers within the colleges. Colleges are currently consulting and engaging with trade union representatives and staff right across the colleges to get their views and input into this as well. But cuts of a 15% level will have a devastating impact on the staffing level as well. And I think one of the key points I want to put across this morning is that colleges have evolved and developed over the last 10 years on the back of further education means business. They're now economic powerhouses of innovation. They engage with industry and business, and there's a very economically relevant curriculum as the department embarks upon a new FE strategy, the danger we have now is that significant cuts to the colleges will impact on the department and the executive's ability to continue to have the right level of skills and knowledge and competences there within our workforce to be able to enable the economy to recover and grow. And the final point I just want to mention is that colleges have gone through significant efficiency drives over the last 7 years since the regional colleges were formed as part of the merger process in 2007. There has been significant leaning, driving economies of scale. There's actually very little left on the bone to be able to move. So the choices that colleges have, management and governing bodies, are very limited in terms of being able to deal with the impending cuts coming down the line. So it's a very significant challenge facing everybody, if not just within further education, but I would argue right across the society and government. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that. And I do agree it will have a knock-on effect right across the country. The 15% in year, will that affect any of the courses that are already up and running this year, or will they be able to be carried on, and then this will be carried into next year, into next year's budget?
Just to clarify, Chair, that 15% is from 2015-16 moving forward. In terms of 14-15, the colleges have managed to maintain their budgets pretty much on what was originally agreed, and the department have worked very closely with the colleges to protect them. However, that situation will change from 15-16 next April.
Okay. Bronwyn, you wanted on?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Jerry, just reading the presentation, you make a quote here that that at a time when industry is telling us that there's skills shortage, to be cutting back on funding to train young people and adults is counterproductive. During our inquiry into the provision of careers, we had employers coming up here telling us that there was a skills mismatch. You know, and I would just like to hear your comments on that. Also, as well, you make reference to the fact that 29% of the working age population leave compulsory education without any qualifications, and then 70% of your students are at GCSE and level 2 below. Could you give a breakdown, or make a distinction between the GCSE and level 2 in terms of people who leave with qualifications from the FE sector?
I'll take the first point first, Bronwyn, in terms of the skills mismatch. And I think the views that colleges, and certainly in colleges and I would have, is that careers guidance, good quality careers guidance, is something that needs to be looked at right across the piece, because the role of impartial careers guidance at an early stage for young people within the school system, we find within the colleges that a lot of young people even stay on for another year of education within a post-primary setting and then come to the colleges at the age of 17. So effectively they've had a year which we would say has not been as productive as what it could have been if it had been within an FE setting. So I think careers guidance, good quality, impartial, professional careers guidance can't be looked at in isolation. It has to be looked at as part of the overall development of the skills base within the country, and looking at the role that colleges provide, engaging with industry, engaging with business, and ensuring that the curriculum is economically relevant to ensure that we're training and skilling people in the right areas where the jobs are going to be. I think careers guidance is actually central to that, but it's getting it right, and it's getting it delivered early within the school system, and independent and impartial is very, very clear. It's critical in that role.
And if I just come in there as well, Bronwyn, you had mentioned just 29% are leaving school without the requisite qualifications, and hence the FE sector is continually picking up the pieces, where the education system has perhaps failed them. In terms of our provision, as Jerry said, 70% of our students are studying at level 2 and below. When we break that down, 23% of those individuals, 23% of individuals across our colleges are studying at entry level or level 1. And 47% are studying at level 2. So there's slightly more in the level 2 category, but that's still individuals who have left school without the prerequisite GCSE English and Maths.
And again, Bronwyn, I think there does need to be a real serious debate about the education between the ages of 14 and 19, because there is overlap in terms of the role that the Department of Education play, where the Department for Employment and Learning come in, because we have very successful examples within the entitlement framework of young people at the ages of 14 and 15 who are within a post-primary setting, but who spend time working on qualifications in partnership with FE colleges as well. So there is something, there's less money to go about, And I think we all have to collectively look at, well, how can we improve and maximise the resources we've got to improve outcomes for young people, ensure that the right opportunities are there. And again, I link it back to careers guidance, that people are choosing careers where there's going to be opportunities, where there's going to be the requirements for the right level of skills. We already have a situation where so many people training to be teachers, training to be lawyers, solicitors, and the jobs just aren't there.
Okay. Regarding the breakdown of figures,
Yes.
would you be able to provide that for each college in terms of level 1 and
I
level
could,
2?
yes, I could come back to you on that, Bronwyn. I can provide those,
Thank
yes.
Okay, Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. I think we're all aware that the reduction in the block grant, coupled with the failure to move in welfare reform, will have a catastrophic effect upon many departments. And I think over the last number of weeks, we're becoming more and more aware of just what it will look like in terms of next year's budget if we don't resolve some of those issues. Our job is obviously to help facilitate job creation and get young people into work. And Jerry had said about ensuring that they're trained in economically relevant areas. I think one of the big success stories is of colleges in particular have been the ability to tailor courses for the needs of employers. And I know that I visited CERT not so long ago and they were able to do a tailored specific course for one of the law companies who were looking at coming into Northern Ireland. In terms of some of the projected cuts next year and the year after, how will that impact your ability to do that kind of work so that Invest Northern Ireland, who are out in the market, are getting a company interested in coming to Northern Ireland? One of the big selling points is that we have a very highly skilled workforce. We have flexible universities and colleges who can put on specific courses to get you the type of graduates or type of skills that you need. How will that be impacted, your ability to do that? And is there ways in which, I mean, currently when you do that, are the companies making a contribution financially to the colleges to put on those courses, or is there a possibility of you charging the companies directly to do those sort of courses to try to ensure that you can still do that sort of work?
I think all options would have to be investigated there, Alistair. We have very strong relationships with companies and industry who actually heavily invest in capital equipment within the colleges. Again, I'll take the example of the Northern Regional College and in Ballymena, where the likes of Michelin and Schlumberger have invested in capital equipment, which not only impacts upon the staff within their organisations, able to keep themselves upskilled and reskilled, but also then the knock-on effect is into the community and into provision within FE. One of the points I want to put across is, college has a very strong track record of working with people and local communities and employers where there have been devastating job losses. Bombardier is an example where Belfast Metropolitan College worked very closely. Last week's devastating news in Ballymena and the closure of Gallagher's factory. That's going to progress now over the next 18 months to 2 years. It'll be the NRC, Northern Regional College, and other colleges who pick up the pieces and work with those highly skilled individuals to enable them to get opportunities to get back into employment and upskill and reskill in areas where... So the role that the colleges play is critically important within local communities and regional communities. The danger we have if college budgets are cut back down, it's where do you make the choices? Because there is a valid choice for every single area. Investing with business and industry is critical to the economy. We all talk about the economy and our people being our #1 priority and getting the economy up and running. But we also have a duty to work with those individuals who are the most disadvantaged from deprived areas, hard to reach individuals where, to be really honest with you, the school system in many ways has failed a lot of our young people who've left after 12 years of education at primary and post-primary. And it's FE who provides the essential skills, provides the opportunity to build their confidence, provides employability skills to get them back on the track and actually make an investment back into society. So choices that have to be made are very, very difficult. I have to say we're not relishing it at the moment, but we're like any other part of the public sector who are going to be going through this process. All that we're putting forward today is that it has to be seen in the wider realm, that it's not just dealing with cuts on a particular area, it will have a knock-on effect to the overall economy and our people, and that's the position we want to put across.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Phil?
Thanks, Tom. One of the points that the Minister regularly makes is his frustration at the ring fencing of the education budget, and similar that has not been given to some aspects of the DEL budget. What's your opinion of that?
Well, I think in terms of the ring fencing for education, our view would be that it is an anomaly if education is ring fenced within the post-primary and primary school sector, yet young people who are progressing still in an educational setting albeit it's also linked into developing their skills and abilities to work and provide pathways to employment, that it is a folly that that's not protected as well. Our argument would be that all education should be protected because it's dealing with the opportunities, the life opportunities for young people, and also to enable them to get the right level of skills and knowledge, build their confidences up, that they can actually contribute back to society and have the right level of skills, that we can support employers who are going to invest, but existing employers who want to ensure that they've got the right level of skill within our people.
And are you talking about the entire DEL budget, or the budget for colleges NI, or all the regional colleges, or the budgets for all of the universities and colleges, or where would you draw the line?
We're here today to talk about further education, which is the role that the colleges play, whether it be in entry level, level 2, level 3 and above, our higher education element, where we currently provide 18% of all higher education in the country, but also the role that we play in engaging with business and industry. We're here to talk about FE. We do have good relationships and working relationships with the partner universities. However, we're here primarily to talk about the role that FE provides.
And Phil, if I just add, in terms of protecting the Department for Employment Learning budget, we do provide a large chunk of our students are aged 16 to 19, and if they were aged 16, 17 or 18 and sitting in a school sector, their budgets would be protected because they're under DE, but because they're in an FE college and under DEL, their budgets aren't protected. And when you look over the last few years, the number of young people coming to a college at the age of 16 has actually fallen, because there's a lot of young people now staying on at school in sixth form, but perhaps for the wrong reason. The academic setting does not suit them, and as a result of that, we're finding that young people at the age of 17 are dropping out of A-levels, so they've done 1 year of AS in an academic setting. That hasn't worked, so then they're coming to the FE sector at the age of 17 and starting a vocational route with ourselves. So we really see that as a 1 year wasted education. So I think it's really important to look at the entire spectrum of education, and it's not just DEL, it's from the age of 4 right through lifelong learning. It all needs to be protected, really, to ensure that we really serve the best for our young people.
And Karen, just to come in there, just looking at progression pathways, if we're looking at industry, and I'm working with my careers team and the careers teams across different colleges, looking at that journey through to where the employers need those resources of staffing, and looking at how we're equipping our young people to go out there. And we've been doing various work, like our Fresh Start programme with NEETs, to try and get them back on track, had a poor school experience, as well as our students with learning difficulties and or disabilities, where we're working with the DES, Disability Employment Service, to make sure that they can progress to an exit point at level 1 to suitable employment that is supported through the Disability Employment Service.
One final point on that, Phil, as well. We had a very successful higher education event yesterday, which promoted higher education within the further education setting. I said we had 11,000 students within our cohort on an annual basis who go through higher education. And the danger we have is that significant budget cuts will affect that. And actually, the offer we have provides a low-cost option for people right across the country, including rural areas. South West College would be one of the key areas who offer higher education opportunities to young people who may not afford the opportunity to go to university in Queen's or Ulster or across the water or down south. But also the offer we have is very flexible. It very much focuses on the employability skills that young people have. All you had to see was the showcase events yesterday, and a number of young people from different colleges who showcased their talents and what FE has been able to give them a platform to do that. So I can make that case probably right across all the various areas that further education is involved in, but these are the areas that are potentially under threat as we move forward.
Well, the showcase event yesterday was excellent. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In terms of the proposed savings, have you got a plan as to how you're going to meet the challenging reductions that have been set out?
That's the challenge, and we're currently working very heavily at the moment to try to pull together the contingency plans by the end of this month. We have a duty to reply back to the Minister's Department by the end of October. What I'm doing within colleges NI is to ensure that there is a strategic sectoral approach taken to this, that it's not just one solution provided in one college and a totally different approach taken in another college. You want to ensure that there's consistency and the colleges actually work together to see where they can come up with savings and contingency plans that minimise this impact. And when I say minimise, it's a very difficult situation we're in, but it's one that it's the biggest priority we have at the moment to work through.
And what will the likely impact be?
Well, that impact will be, no doubt, we'll have to cut provision. Of course, that's going to affect learners. it's going to have a knock-on effect on job losses. I can't give any figures what that will be at the moment, but we've shared that information with the trade unions. They're aware that we're going to cut provision. We've over 4,100 staff. It's one of the biggest costs we have within the colleges. Our staff are our most important resource, but if we're cutting provision, there will be a knock-on effect. Can't give numbers at the moment, but that's a very likely outcome from that as well.
You keep us updated, will you?
We'll be happy to keep the committee updated, yeah.
Tom?
Okay, Val, right, David?
Thanks, Chair. And obviously there are some very hard decisions in the near future due to the financial situation and the impasse on welfare reform, particularly in this sector, because I think it deals with a lot of the most vulnerable in the young sector in relation to the likes of needs and whatnot. Is there, in putting on a course or sustaining a course, is there a number that has to be attained to make that course viable, to make it happen? Are you aware of those sort of figures, or by participants on the course?
Yeah, like all colleges will go through whenever they're commencing their programme, their planned programme. A lot of it is based around the numbers coming through, and there'll be different thresholds, David, in terms of probably what the different courses are. But obviously, courses is again a delivery. In the public sector, there has to be a viability in that. The danger we have is just right across the board. Is that where do you begin to make those difficult choices? Because a level 1 course for young people coming in from, say, a very disadvantaged background, that's critical for their life chances.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you take the higher education, a foundation degree delivered in another college, that's critical for somebody else. We've seen the opportunities yesterday where people had progressed from working. I think there was a story of somebody working in a chip shop and made their way right through completing a foundation degree, and and other people able to start their own businesses. It's where you make them choices, and they all have very, very strong selling points. It's not an easy task.
Yeah, no, I was absent from last week's meeting due to a meeting with one of the local colleges in relation to trying to sustain a course and make it continue. Come out successfully at the end of the day, but it did emerge that the figures was very important, particularly moving forward where there's going to be cuts. Whereby if you had potentially a class or a course of 10 people who were coming from a needs background, it then became very unsustainable, and that they were going to be cut loose basically, and that's how severe I see it anyway. I don't know how you agree with that.
Well, Jasper,
we've developed a Fresh Start programme for NEETs, and what we're finding is that the lecturer needs mentoring support. Now, if the students have a learning disability, there is funding through the Additional Support Fund to put that support in. However, if they haven't a diagnosed learning disability as a core group and set up as a discrete programme, the funding is not there currently to put that mentor support in there. So if somebody's kicking off about what's happened at the weekend, then you need the mentor support, or it distracts the other learners really. So we're trying to balance that. But we have set those programmes up to get those young people back on track, and academically they should be able to move level 2, level 3 and so on. And that's what we're working at. And we had a group in from Denmark last week, from a college in southern Denmark, to look at that best practice example of our Fresh Start programme. So there are examples of those across different colleges. So it's essential that work where those people have had a very poor school experience, we're working with the OTIS, we're working with probation boards, we're looking at criminal checks, all of those things to try and give these people a second start, really an opportunity to achieve. And also what the group last week were very interested in, small bite-sized achievements where somebody has never achieved anything.
That's the worry of the whole situation moving forward, to be fair.
Okay, Fra?
Sure, just a couple of points. And obviously, the picking up on what people have said, it's a fairly depressing picture. And I think even taking on board what David has said, is that whilst education is important, that this committee has stressed time after time the importance of dealing with the whole issue of needs, and any impact on that would certainly be a concern to us. But there's also an impression being given at this committee week after week, and certainly it's been raised again by 2 members. My understanding is that what the colleges are doing is that they're looking at the budget cuts that's emanating from the reduction in the Black Grant over a period of time, and that there has been no cuts earned as a result of welfare reform to date. Have you been told the initiate cuts as a result of welfare reform?
It's a 15% cut, we're being told, in our recurrent budget next year.
But is it in relation to welfare reform or the cut to the black grant?
I think in terms of the issue is that there's an impasse and is what's coming through from Dale. In the fact that the decisions haven't been made. So what's coming across the line to us, and trying to remain very apolitical in this area, is the fact that this reality of the situation is that due to budget pressures and welfare reform has been quoted within correspondence, that we have a 15%.
See, the point that I'm making is that whilst welfare reform, and it's quoted at every meeting that we go to, what we're dealing with here is the working out of the cut to the black grant a number of years ago. And whilst there's been cut year on year, this has been the worst year of it. So by and large, what we're dealing with is the rollout of the cuts to the black grant.
I think in terms of even budgetary cuts over the last number of years, I think if you look at what happened in the Republic of Ireland, and I think even moving beyond 2015-16, the outlook does look particularly bleak right across the piece. And the position we have is that you take the amount of fixed costs which are built into college budgets in terms of the premises we have, the engagement in community outreach centres, 400 outreach centres right across the country as well. Those, if you take those areas out of the picture, a 15% cut will have actually it will have a knock-on effect of actually more than 20%. Because where we have to look at is provision and staff are the two big areas, and whilst we can continue to drive further efficiencies down, colleges have been on that journey successfully, and there's always, we'll have to go back and look at how we can improve things and be more efficient and be more economical in how we do things, but there's not a lot left to give there.
Okay, thank you, and that seems to be all indications for questions. Thank you for coming before committee today and setting it out clearly before us as to what your concerns and difficulties and challenges are, and certainly as a committee we'll bear all those in mind. Thank you again.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chairman. We'd be delighted to come back once we have a wee bit more information about that to brief the committee again in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Right, we'll move on. Our next briefing is from the National Union of Students. And again, I'd remind members to keep their electronic devices all switched off. At page 73, you'll get your briefing paper. And that's critical. Are the folk here? Okay, you're very welcome. And I welcome Ms. Rebecca Hall, President, Mr. Fergal McFerrin, the Deputy President, Ms. Hannah McNamara, who is the Further Education Officer, and Mr. Matthew Carroll, the Welfare Officer. We have your papers in front of you, so we'll give you 10 minutes max to speak to committee, and then we'll open up the questions.
That's great.
Okay.
So hi, I'm Rebecca Hall, I'm the NUS-USI President, and if it helps with my team to kind of just introduce who they are.
I'm Hannah McNamara, I'm the Further Education Officer, and I've just graduated after doing an HND at South Eastern Regional College.
I'm Fergal McFerrin, I'm the Deputy President and a final year student at Queen's University in Belfast.
I'm Matthew Carroll, I'm the Welfare Officer, and I'm on my final year studying in Southern Regional College.
So we're very pleased to be given the opportunity today to provide this presentation to the Employment and Learning Committee. I would like to thank the Chair and the Committee for the opportunity to speak on hardship funds today, and particularly focus on NUS-USI's Pound in Your Pocket survey. So the survey was carried out, it was one of the largest and most detailed and comprehensive surveys ever carried out in student finance in Northern Ireland. Between late 2013 and early 2014, NUS-USI conducted an online survey of further and higher education students in Northern Ireland to better understand students' experience of financial support and hardship, the sources of income they use to pay for living expenses, as well as to examine the extent to which financial considerations affected their well-being. A total of 3,245 valid responses were received. Obviously, there's been much media coverage and discussion around FE student hardship funding, and it's extremely interesting to look at the level of financial difficulty that our research has indicated that FE students face. And this is strongly underlined in the reason behind our concerns around the FE student hardship funding. The findings from the Pound Pocket survey paint a very troubling picture about the financial situations that students face here. So I'm just going to kind of go over some of the key outlines of the survey and then kind of drill down deeper into some of those issues, and then I'll touch on FE hardship. So kind of key findings. Firstly, there are clear associations between student financial support and practice, student wellbeing, socio-economic background and retention. 35% of students surveyed have seriously considered leaving their course, and 56% of those students surveyed said that they have seriously considered leaving their course and cited financial difficulties as the main reason. 58% of students regularly worry about not having enough money to meet their basic living expenses, such as rent or utility bills, with almost 70% concerned about future levels of debt. The extent that 45% of students surveyed reported they struggled to concentrate on their studies and worried about their finances. Course-related costs are prevalent, expensive and often concealed, and there is clear association between high course costs and low well-being, as well as levels of accommodation, as well as with high levels of accommodation and transport costs. Almost half of students surveyed work during term time, and around a third of those work for over 17 hours per week alongside their course. For those working part-time, longer hours associated with poorer well-being. Older students, student parents, disabled students, students from interface areas and students from low participation neighbourhoods are often amongst the worst off in financial well-being terms and in their finances overall. And information about financial support is not clear to them. Even relatively small levels of debt in the form of bank loans, credit cards and high-risk borrowing like payday lenders are strongly associated with poor student well-being. High debt levels and poor financial well-being are associated with a lack of formal financial education. And access to financial support from the family has a significant association with both well-being and progression to further study. Access to financial support from the family has a significant association. Oh, sorry, I've got that one. Students in societies and clubs feel more able to manage their finances and call on support of their peers, which is important, as it means that less likely to consider leaving their course. So there are other kind of going into more deeply into financial difficulties and the risk of leaving their course. This is particularly important around the retention of students. So 37% of students then have considered leaving the course. And we found that this was consistent across all groups of students in further education, undergrad and postgrad. And this is definitely more pronounced in older students. Overall, 58% of those respondents across the sample strongly agreed that I regularly worry about not having enough money to meet my basic living expenses. Within further education, 40% of respondents aged 16 to 18 on entry agreed or strongly agreed, compared to 69% of respondents aged 19 plus on entry. For undergraduate respondents, 80% aged 25 or over agreed or strongly agreed, compared to 53% of those 17 to 20 on entry. And there are similar levels of agreement around those of postgraduate students, with around 53% agreeing or strongly agreeing. When we break this down into gender, 79% of student parents and 66% of those from an interface area strongly agreed or disagreed, or agreed that they worried about not having enough money to meet their basic living expenses. So 34% of women compared to 23% of men. So 11% more women were worried about not having enough money to meet their basic living expenses. I'll move on here to course costs. As we know, this is a key level of worry for many, many students. So across all groups, 61% of students had paid for materials and activities or other associated costs with costs associated with completing their programme of study. 20% 20% of FE students had spent between about £25 and £50 on materials, activities and other costs, while 27% of undergraduates responded they'd spent over £100, between £100 and £200 in the previous academic term. We took a kind of consensus of what these the cost of these students were incurring, and we can see that the relative prevalence of different kinds of costs. 72% of the course materials they responded had paid for were books, and other significant costs were included printing, stationery, field trips, uniform costs and travel to placements. These costs are a significant worry for many, many students who worry about being able to get to vital placements, are wearing the right uniform, have the right books. It's important to be able to succeed to have those things. I think that this is really important when we link that to well-being. And respondents who had paid higher costs were considerably less likely to indicate that they felt able to concentrate on their studies, with the level falling to 32% when the costs were at a level of £50 to £100, and down to 26% when students were paying over £300 per term for hidden course costs. Transport costs, again, are particularly worrying. 75% of FE students had associated costs associated with travel, and the vast majority of undergrads, so around 83%, had paid travel costs. Around 60% of those paying over £20 a week. We asked students how much time they spent travelling. 53% of all students reported spending 30 minutes or more on one journey to their place of study. And students from low participation postcodes were more likely to spend longer travelling, with 63% spending more than 30 minutes travelling to their place of study, compared to their peers who represented 49% from higher participation postcode areas. Across the sample, when it came to government and institutional support, around 33% of respondents agreed that they find it easy to understand what financial support I'm entitled to. But only 25% agreed that it was completely clear how much financial support they'd receive. But 23% said it was not at all clear. When it came to family support, 45% of respondents said they received support from their family, such as from their spouse, partner, parents or other relatives. And the types of support received by family ranged from financial support, accommodation, living support and childcare, transport, food and groceries. Postgraduates were significantly more likely to receive this kind of support than undergraduates, and 45% of students in FE received the support in some way from their family. When it came to employment, another key area that many students worry about and have to take up jobs to fund their study, we found that almost half of all students surveyed worked during term time, and a third of those were working over 17 hours per week. Across the study sample, 27% of FE respondents, 38% of postgrads, and 31% of HE respondents indicated they worked during the term time. When we associated this with well-being, student well-being, those working in part-time employment between 0 and 32 hours per week alongside their studies, longer hours were associated with poorer well-being, and other indicators particularly show this. So 23% of those working 25 to 32 hours were able to concentrate on their studies, compared to those working lower hours between 0 to 8 hours per week. And only 32% of those working 25 to 32 hours felt able to balance their relationships, work, family and study, compared to 58% of those working 0 to 8 hours. The kind of thing that this all leads to then, a lot of these student worries, is then students taking out debt and borrowing for living costs, something that we think is particularly worrying across all areas of society at the moment, but we think this is really shocking, and we want to kind of make sure that students aren't a victim of kind of payday lenders and the like. So our respondents tell us that they have borrowed in many forms. Overdrafts were the most common kind of debt incurred, with 37% of undergrads and slightly fewer postgrads surveyed reporting they'd taken out this type of debt. But loans from friends and family were common, and 23% reporting with similar proportions from postgrads and FE students. However, postgraduates were more likely than their undergraduate counterparts to take out credit cards to foot the cost of their study. A small majority, but still very important, 5% of respondents had taken on a form of high-risk debt, such as payday loans, cash a cheque or doorstep loans, and we think this is very, very worrying. We know that in England, payday lenders have kind of made students, they're an ideal market for this kind of lending, and we think this is very, very worrying. We don't want students to fall victim, and we don't want payday lenders to prey on people in society who are potentially some of the most vulnerable. I suppose when we kind of go into debt and well-being then, respondents with a greater level of debt were more likely to agree or strongly agree that they regularly worried about not having enough money to meet their living expenses. Similar, the level of debt that a respondent was, there's less likely a respondent was to agree or strongly agree. They felt able to concentrate on their studies without worrying about finances. The vertical line on the graph shows, I think it's in the pound your pocket, shows the point at which students who reported a level of well-being were found to be twice as likely to have seriously considered leaving their course, and this finding forms a conclusion to the Find in Your Pocket research as the ultimate result of an inability to access support, high costs and cash flow problems and insufficient income is a stress, worry, and people worry about not completing courses. I'll just take so I move on to key information around hardship funds. So since the year 2009-2010, we've seen a reduction in the FE student hardship funding over the past 5 years. NUS-USI is deeply concerned about this and believes that hardship funding should reflect rising living costs and the financial difficulties which students face. While we commend any increase in spending on FE awards, NUS-USI does not believe this provides justification for reducing the FE Student Hardship Fund. We believe that investment should be made in both funding, both hardship funds and FE awards, and this should reflect increased living costs. We do not want to see one played off against the other. It's crucial that FE hardship funds are promoted and publicised to students effectively as possible, and that we're very pleased that the Minister indicated in a recent Assembly debate that he will be examining how we can be better promoted. If there is a lack of information about how to apply for hardship funding, this could be a very significant factor in relation to demand and take-up of the fund. FE students are under very significant financial pressures, and any increased promotion of the hardship funding available to students could see a significant increase in demand. And of those surveyed in the NUS-USI's Pound Your Pocket, around a fifth of students, only a fifth of students in FE, were completely or somewhat clear about their financial support before they started their course. Students are in a very difficult financial position at present, and the very detailed Pound Your Pocket survey carried out kind of details this in many ways. 52% of FE students surveyed who were over 19 disagreed with the statement that I feel able to concentrate on my studies without worried about finances. FE student hardship funding, we know, is led by demand. However, demand and allocation should reflect the financial difficulties that students face in these times of increasing living costs. The allocation of this fund to students does not reflect this reality at present. NUS-USI believes that the eligibility criteria for allocating both FE student hardship funding and the FE award should be made to be less restrictive to ensure that more people in significant financial difficulties can avail of this funding. Because of the criteria for the FE award, people who have a degree but want to study a course which is not considered educational progression may not be eligible for the award and therefore may have to rely on gaining hardship funding. The funding also sets out criteria that have been related to career progression too, though, and takes into account qualifications that have been received or achieved within the last 10 years. This means that people in significant need could be ineligible for both FE Award and the Hardship Fund. The element of the criteria should be removed in relation to both funds. There appears to be little or no consultation with students or students' unions on reduction in the FE Hardship Fund, and there needs to be increased consultation with NUSUSI and with students' unions and students around the financial allocations of hardship funding, as students know the difficult financial realities they face. It's important that if the allocations of FE student hardship funds were not fully used up, the DEL examines the use of the issue to ensure that FE students who are in need receive it.
Rebecca, we're going to have to ask you to
That's fine.
get to an
Yeah,
end, because
that's fine. So I'm kind of nearly there, really. So I'm actually going to say, in summary, around hardship particularly, we believe that the solution to this is for the FE Student Hardship Fund to be better promoted to students, and that the eligibility for the FE Student Hardship Fund to be reassessed and reformed to make it less restrictive.
Okay, thank you. And again, it seems throughout your presentation and all that the main worry appears to be the basic living expenses for students. Do you find that difference from the different areas that the students come from, or is it equal across the board?
I'd say that it's pretty prevalent across the board. I think obviously when you break it down, it does depend on students who have ability to access funding from parents and family and things like that. But I think that living costs do affect students across the board, yes.
Right. And Matthew, you're the welfare officer.
Yeah.
Do you have many students come to you with difficulties and problems posed by the simple fact that they find they can't make ends meet?
Well, also the fact that I'm a student in Southern Regional College, I would just have students and friends talk to me about how when they're not eligible for hardship fund or EMA due to the fact that their parents they pass the criteria, so they're not eligible. But that's not, parents aren't always there to supply their children with the money, whether they might not even have the money themselves to give to their children. And a lot of them have part-time jobs, but I find that a lot of students are on 0-hour contracts, which means that their employer is not obliged to give them a set amount of hours every week. So one week they could have no hours, and the next week they could have 16, so they aren't able to plan the amount of money they have in future, so they're able to make ends meet.
Yeah. Pat?
Yeah, good morning. You're all very welcome. Some of the questions asked of the colleges, could you give us a run-through of someone applying for money? Taking your own point, Matthew, about the means testing, eligibility criteria, and give me an example of somebody who was turned down.
Well, I personally have never went through the experience of the hardship fund because my parent, if I'm struggling to pay, I also have a part-time job, but if I'm struggling to pay, my parents would cover the costs. But to my fact, the only people that I know of that have applied and haven't been able to get hardship fund is because of their parents' income.
A lot of the time as well is because the students don't actually know about the hardship fund to begin with. I've known many people who've had to drop out of their course, and afterwards I've gone to them and said, did you not ask for help? Did you not talk about the hardship fund? I didn't know about it. That's what they've told me. They're in the position that they're so worried about not being able to pay their living costs or chip in with money with their family that they just have to drop out, and they've nowhere else to turn. They just are so panicked about it, they just don't know where to go, basically.
Well, I think it's a fine point, and I'm just looking at your briefing note for the recent debate, and there's 3 asks and one is regarding the promotion of it and access to it. How often do you as a body meet either the Minister or senior officials to go over some of these issues?
Reasonably regularly. I'd say probably every 3 months or so. I think that, and we frequently meet Robin as well, Robin Swan. So I think we do have a reasonable kind of interaction with the Minister, I think, but we always do discuss kind of a range of issues.
Okay, on three of the areas that you're highlighting is the promotion Matthew's mentioned. What has the department said that they're going to do and going forward in relation to the criteria? Because we open it up, then it's going to be attractive more, and there might be less going around as well if we don't subsequently get an increase on it. So what's your proposal to relax the criteria? What are you suggesting we do? And then you're also saying that there isn't really any meaningful consultation with the unions in terms of financial allocations. Could you go into a wee bit more detail?
I think in terms of, Rebecca's right in saying that we've had quite a reasonably good working relationship with the department, but on this specific issue, we were never consulted to our knowledge. There has been no involvement in terms of student unions and student representatives, so we didn't actually know. This has been something that's been ongoing for a while, and we didn't know that it was happening until this year. Regarding the actual criteria, I don't know if you've seen the figures, but we've been provided with figures from the department that indicate the numbers of students who have applied to the hardship fund who haven't been granted it. Now,
can you share them?
Yes. So, in 2013-14, 572 students from the 6 colleges applied and were refused the hardship fund. In 2012-13, there was 321. So you can see yourself that there is an increase there as well. Now, there's obviously an increased demand reflected from those figures, but we don't know why these students were refused access to the hardship fund, and that's something that we would be keen to find out. Now, those are only the students that we know about.
It's a very good point, because colleges in Northern Ireland said they're meeting the demand. So the suggestion was that anybody asking is getting. You know, one can interpret that. So I think it is something, Chair, we need to tease out a wee bit more. Just a final question. It's something I have an interest in as Chair of the All-Party Group on disability and learning disability. How does someone with a disability face here who would be much more vulnerable, much more marginalised? Is there a higher level of criteria or an easy level of criteria for access for those who would be most vulnerable?
I suppose, I think that it would be, that there's obviously different levels of funding available to disabled students, the Disabled Students Allowance, and those kind of things that are available to disabled students, which are essential for students to access education and to be retained in their course to completion. And we've seen in England how the government tried to kind of cut disabled students' allowance, and that cut was eventually reversed and has been reassessed by the government. We just want to make sure that in the future in Northern Ireland DSA is retained. It's essential to many students going through their course, but we do know that the figures do show that disabled students are vulnerable financially whilst in university and college.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and I think actually what Colleges NI said was that anyone that met the eligible criteria for the hardship fund got it, and that that was something like 83% of applicants that actually got that, and anyone that didn't get it, then they were given further advice on where they could get other funding and other sources of funding from. I think that's actually what they did tell us when they're in here. Alistair?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Rebecca, I think you had acknowledged that, and the Chair's right about the criteria, and I think there's always going to be people rejected if there's a criteria, and perhaps there needs to be a debate around criteria if that is causing an issue. But I think you acknowledged yourself that there's been an increase in terms of the amount of government funding for student support across the board, and perhaps you've expressed a concern that it's shifted away from the hardship funding towards the FE awards. But is that not a good thing? Is it not a good thing that we're front-loading that support to ensure that we don't get students in a position where they're facing hardship? Would you not support that general shift?
I do support the general shift. I think I suppose I don't support a kind of pitting one against the other. I think that both are essential for different reasons. I think that for many students, getting an FE award is essential for them kind of getting onto a course. But we know that for many people, like hardships for those that don't receive an FE award, hardship's essential for keeping them there, and I think both things are just as important as each other. And for many students, they just wouldn't make it without this, and like that isn't like the Northern Ireland that we want to see. We want to see students like successful and being like financially supported through college and being successful graduates. I think that both of those things are very different, and I think that even though I obviously support the allocation of FE awards, which are very important, I would like to see hardship like kind of equally supported.
But surely if you're making a shift towards the FE awards and you are, as a result, reducing the amount of people who need to have hardship funds, you're going to have, the figures are going to have an imbalance anyway. But is that not a good thing?
But it's different, I suppose, when I bring it back to kind of people who want to go back to college to retrain. So they might have a degree in, I don't know, something different, and want to go to college to learn to reskill and be plumber, I don't know. And I think those kind of things, like those times are the times when you're not eligible to apply for some of those things because it's not classed as career progression because you already have a degree. But if you want to skill and go into a trade and those kind of things, like in that point, that doesn't reflect like how financially like stable you might be. And I think that it's those kind of grey areas where we need to be really clear that we want to support everyone going into education, especially kind of older students who want to reskill and then go back into the economy and contribute with starting businesses, whatever. Those kind of things are particularly important. And it's those kind of bits in the criteria that I think are important in being reassessed.
And just two other points. In terms of the key findings in your report, you've said that 35% of students surveyed have seriously considered leaving their course. Is the important figure for us not the number who have seriously considered, but the number who actually do? And we've given quite a bit of time to this issue, both in this committee with the Minister and the floor of the House, and indeed with Colleges NI just before you came here. And they're telling us that the retention rate amongst the colleges is now 89%, which is a very impressive retention rate, and it's been going up year on year on year. So how do you match the findings of the number of students who said they've considered it with the actual reality that actually more and more students are staying on in FE?
Well, I suppose that it's that 89% is excellent, but it's the 11% that we worry about. And like I think that obviously in our survey we can't track those who do leave, and those like kind of the 35% who are worried, and then of those the 58% who are worried particularly about finances. That's worrying for us. We don't know how many of those do go on to leave their course. We can't track that through this data, but I think that it is that 11% that are worrying, and we want to make sure that those people aren't kind of left to fall out of the system, and that they're supported by hardship, because like that's what it's really there for. It's there for those people who just can't make it without it.
And in terms of your key finding number 3, 58% regularly worry about not having enough money. Are you surprised that's so low? Because I know very few people, whether they're students or whether they're in work or what age they are, that don't worry about not being able to do certain things because not having enough money. So can you tell me the value in that figure, or the value in the way that question has been asked? Because I would have thought nearly 99% of people would have worried about not having enough money.
I think it reflects the fact that some students are probably having to ask parents and relatives, family for support, and then they might be in a position financially where parents can help them out, and they might not necessarily worry themselves. But I do think 58% is still a large amount of students, and I think, like, anecdotally speaking to students and other officers, like, we have worried about like finances. And I think that the amount of students that I talk to who worry about not being able to turn the heating on or buy oil until December when they're freezing because they just can't afford it until then. And like, I wouldn't want to see anybody like that, and I definitely wouldn't want to see students in that position.
And just finally, if I can, Chair, you'd mentioned about 5% of students having taken out a high-risk debt in terms of some of the payday lenders or perhaps even worse sort of places to borrow money from. Have you any idea whether those 5% of people have, if they're currently in receipt or if they were in receipt of EMA, of FE awards or hardship funds, whether they'd applied and been rejected from them, or do we have any more information on that 5% of their circumstances? No.
No, I suppose that's the thing. With this data, we then can't see the kind of destination of those students. It was just like at that point, those students had said that they had taken out that.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, Alistair. Phil?
Thanks, Tom, and thanks for your presentation. It's good to have you on the other side of the table today after the grilling we faced yesterday. In terms of the pound in your pocket report, is this an annual thing that NUS USA now intend to do?
It hasn't been. We haven't made it annual. I think that we maybe have the ability to do it again in the future, but it isn't planned for again this year.
Okay. What kind of response did you have from the department to the findings of the report?
The day that it was released was our annual conference, and the day after, the Minister responded by reviewing HE student finance, which was for us an excellent response, particularly for HE students, so we can kind of really look into drill into student finance and see the position that students are in terms of cost of living associated with many things, but how student finance kind of helps students, support students through university.
And have any tangible changes been made as a result of the report?
Not yet.
In terms of my questions are all over the place here, so I won't follow any regular trend. In terms of the availability of part-time work for students, if you look at 10 years ago, students would have been able to get part-time work in retail shops and other such places, but now the way the employment market is, it's graduates and other skilled workers that are taking those jobs. What's the knock-on impact on students as a result of that?
Yeah, well, it's very hard. I know myself, I actually have 3 jobs at the minute just to be able to afford. I've just started at Queen's just to be able to afford my basic living costs. And none of them are permanent. I work in 2 as an agency worker and 1's a 0-hour contract. There's nothing other than those type of jobs out there for students, especially with students who don't have a lot of experience in certain areas. So students are taking jobs that they may not be related to what they're studying because they just need something that they can get money from, basically. They're working lots of hours a week, or the 0-hour contracts that could be working nothing one week and then 20 hours the next week. You know, there's no balance there, but students are definitely find it very difficult to find regular work.
Okay. In terms of the hardship fund, it's your assertion that it's not adequately promoted, and I think I tend to probably agree. How can that be improved, and what role does NUS USA have in increasing the promotion of it?
I think particularly we'd really love the opportunity to be able to work with the department to make the kind of advertisement of it student-led and something that things like posters around campus and those kind of visual things that students see walking around the college really do help. And at the moment, I don't think either the ones in further education say that you would see those, but those kind of things can really help. And I think that it's something as simple as that we could really look forward to working with the department to kind of make attractive to students, so students really know that the fund's there.
Okay. Is there any evidence that payday lenders are advertising in university or college campuses or in any promotional material that's been produced by the colleges?
We haven't seen it here yet, but we've definitely seen it in the UK, and there's some work done by NUS around payday lenders kind of starting to emerge a little bit on campus and taking out billboards that were very close to large universities, things like this. We just want to, I think 2 universities became payday lender free zones, and they basically stopped those companies advertising anywhere near campus. I think that we could be looking at a similar situation in Northern Ireland. I just don't want that to be the case, obviously.
Is that a campaign that you're considering initiating, trying to get payday lenders banned from advertising in university and colleges?
Yeah, I think it's something that we definitely want to look into and see kind of what the impact that NUS's research was, and see how we could kind of look at that in Northern Ireland context. Would be really interesting for us.
Okay. And do you see the manner in which payments are currently made to students in a tri-annual basis? How big of a problem does that present for students in terms of budgeting? Because in no other sphere of life would you be asked to budget in such a way. Everybody else is paid weekly, fortnightly or monthly. So how big of a problem does that present, and have you made any efforts to try and get the department to change that?
I suppose we're students still, but I don't know. I think finding budgeting.
It is specifically in terms of how your student finance is given to you. Quite often, in the reality of life, in terms of when your wages come in, it's at the end of every month. If you get your student finance 3 times a year, it's not reflective of the reality of what you're going to go into in later life. It doesn't prepare you in any practical sense for what you're going to be going into in terms of your future endeavours, and I don't think it's an appropriate way to prepare our students in higher and further education to prepare themselves for later life, is certainly my take on it.
Yeah, I think that the ability to budget is very difficult when you're kind of receiving money like on a trial and error basis. I think that it's quite difficult.
And have you raised that issue with the department?
I think that we have, yes.
And did you get any kind of a response?
I think that it will be something that we've actually put into the consultation around student finance. So I think that it's something we'll be discussing more with the department.
Okay, thanks very much. Tom?
Okay, nobody else has indicated, but can I ask you one thing? Given the difficulties that there are around students and the financial implications that they have, do you think that people that are going forward to universities and are availing of a student loan and that type of thing, do you think there should be some course for financial management for them prior to coming in and getting that type of funding?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is a clear actually section in the Pound Your Pocket around financial education, but we think that financial education for students would actually solve kind of a number of issues, either by helping with budgeting, things that aren't really covered in school, that are kind of like the lessons of life that when you get to 18 and leave the family home, you might not know about. And we really like to see, actually, I think that something so simple as like financial education would be really, really helpful for a lot of students.
And is that something as a union you are feeding into the ministry?
That we will be doing, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, just a suggestion. Open University launched that Managing My Money programme here last Tuesday. It might be useful if we sent details on that to NUS USI, so you can circulate that around your membership if they're interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming before committee today, and I think you've answered up pretty well.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, committee, we're moving on to a departmental briefing for the Disability Employment Strategy. At page 104, you'll get your briefing paper, and at page 107, there's a PowerPoint presentation. And we do have Mr. David Sales with us. Sales. Normally the agenda.
Yeah, but the license there. Some people don't want to come in. I don't know if he's...
David and Terry, you're very welcome to committee today and to give us a briefing on the Disability Employment Strategy. I'll give you up to 10 minutes to give us a briefing. We do have your papers in front of us, so hopefully the committee will have read them. So we'll give you up to 10 minutes and then we'll have some questions.
Okay. I'll just begin by introducing myself. It's the first time I'm in front of the committee. I'm the new Director for the Employment Service. Took over from Colin Boyle at the beginning of September.
Yeah.
Look forward to working with you all over coming months.
Well, you're very welcome and we wish you well in your role.
Thank you. We're here today at your request to provide an update on our disability employment strategy. I think it was March of this year was the last time Terry was in front of the committee on this. We'll do a very quick recap just because I know there's been some new committee members have joined, but we're conscious you're running behind time, so we'll catch you up. Broad outline, we're going to cover the purpose of the strategy and its objectives, the themes within the strategy, the approach that we've been taking working with the disability sector and its development, our delivery model, and some of the improvements that we would like to see through the strategy, and then the timeline, and then we're happy to take any sort of questions. Okay. So I'll hand over and Terry will take us through.
Okay, thank you. I suppose I would just start with a brief update from the previous briefing in March. Most of the activity has been around the development of what will be the public consultation document on the strategy. That's been quite time consuming, but we've a fairly robust document now. It's around 60 odd pages. The key aspects being the proposals that we would intend to take forward with the strategy, and then the questions that will go out to the wider public, who will be the target audience of the public consultation process. During that time, I've also input into the consultation process on the Enabling Success, the Economic and Activity Strategy, as have some of the colleagues on the Strategic Working Group from the sector. And as much as anything, it was about, one, putting forward our support for that particular element, which is aimed at a much wider target group, predominantly those people who have been long-term incapacity benefit recipients and lone parents, but in doing so highlighting why we think there's a genuine need still for a specific disability strategy for those people with more significant disabilities. And then, as you'll have seen from the papers, the very recent development, just when we thought we were there, was the support from the department to extend the strategy beyond just employment and to include those other services that DEL has prime responsibility for, mainly careers, training, skills and further and higher education, which, whilst it may slow down the process a little bit for us, I think it is most definitely the right way to go. I'd referred to last time that that's where our consultations have started. It's taken us a while to get there, but I think if we've got departmental and ministerial support, then I certainly wouldn't want to miss out on that opportunity. In terms then of the continued rationale, I'll give you, there's a few slides there which explain the evidence base. One, the very local evidence base that arose from the 8 user engagement events that we ran ourselves in the department, but also then the very recent research paper from the Centre for Economic Inclusion in GB, which in many ways agreed with our original proposals, that there are different levels of employment support required for our various unemployed clients, from the job ready through to those in our target group, and that's those people with more significant disability barriers. Without specialist and additional support, they will be very unlikely to make their way into employment. And then the focus on young people in particular, and that's one of the other differences in economic inactivity. Economic inactivity is by and large aiming at those people who have been on benefit for 5 years and more. We want to prevent the next generation of young people, especially young disabled people, from becoming economically inactive. So we intend to target the various streams that those young people will come through. So in terms of extending the remit, there is lots of good work that's happening across our various departmental responsibilities. But the two key benefits I see in extending the remit is, one, to actually formalise and strengthen the linkage between the various aspects, but also it gives us a real opportunity to review what is actually being delivered within FE, HE, Training for Success and other initiatives, because they'll be totally drawn into the actual strategy itself. So ultimately what we're trying to achieve through the departmental approach is a very, very clear and simple and easy pathway for those young people from the time they'll be leaving full-time education through to sustained employment. And I think that the strategy as it's now constituted would give us that ideal opportunity. In terms of disability specialist roles, we're still looking, as I explained last time, around a cohort of 9 specialists, given as 3 per employment service region. But by extending the strategy, then there would be a very, very clear link between those employment officers and our own careers advisors, with the idea that there would be a certain cohort of our existing careers advisors who would have specific responsibility for dealing with the young people with disabilities. What I'm really trying to do is develop teams that would be experts in their field, have a real passion for that role, and of course then cement the already positive relationship we have with the disability sector employment teams. So in terms then of the what we're currently doing, and again tying with a timeline, whilst there will inevitably slippage in trying to extend this remit, it's not to say that we're standing still. Both from a departmental perspective, we're still supporting lots of people and lots more people month on month into employment. The disability sector are doing likewise, and a lot of the time they're doing it on behalf of the department through some of the contracted provision. But I suppose it'd be remiss not to mention the likes of the ESF round of applications covering the years 2015 to 2020 is upon us now. So they have said to us that is going to be a major priority for them over the next couple of months, because there's around £25 million worth of departmental money added to the 40 million coming from Brussels for those ESF projects, purely to do with disability and employment initiatives. So that in many ways dictates their structure and capacity and even the future of some of those organisations. So they'll obviously be attracted to that particular piece of work, and within the Disability Employment Service, we'll be a public match funder for a lot of those organisations, so I'll be working closely with them on that particular piece of work. But it's not to say that we won't continue to develop the consultation document. The disability sector have worked with us. We had a sub-editing group that was 2 members of the sector, along with myself and a colleague. We had the document at the stage it was almost ready to go. All I need to do now is build in the other elements of the departmental services that I've referred to earlier. So, as I say, that's a very quick summary of where we are now and what has been happening since I was last in front of you, and I'm very happy to take questions then.
Okay, thank you. If we look at your presentation and your strategic working group, you've given the list of membership of your strategic working group. Only thing that I do notice missing is that there are no departments mentioned in this, or is that something that's taken forward by OFMD FM?
Sure. OFMD take forward a number of initiatives that they coordinate responses on behalf of other departments. In my experience, it hasn't been the easiest job in the world to get other departmental officials to commit themselves full-time to pieces of work like this. And you know, we took a decision at the outset that if the other departments weren't fully on board at the outset, we would proceed from a departmental approach. Our focus has got to be on employment. In response even to the Bamford action plan, there are a number of actions that other departments certainly need to take the lead on. But if we're going to focus on what we can realistically achieve between skills and employment, then within the department we have the authority to do so. So we took a decision that we would proceed rather than wait for others to come on board, because goodness knows how long we would have waited.
Okay. Pat?
Thanks, Chair. Good morning. You're very welcome. Good luck, David, in your new post.
Okay.
We look forward to the challenges that we all face here. Certainly, in the past, I've been very critical of the department in terms of this issue, but certainly I'm much more content with some of the language and some of the actions on this one. But your latter points about ESF monies, which is fine, and making a statement that we're going to focus on disability. Is there areas of that that are going to be fundamentally focused or ring-fenced on the programme of activities that involves disabled people?
Yes, the amount that I referred to, Pat, is a proportion of the total ESF money. That money that I referred to, there's a particular category of the ESF programme for 2015 to 2020 that is going to focus on social inclusion with a particular emphasis on disability. So that actual amount is the amount that's going to be ring-fenced for those disability projects. So it's around 65 million in total. Then that has to be topped up with 35% of match funding that the respective organisations will have to seek out from various sources, including their own organisation. For example, if they're a social economy business, then they can supplement that themselves. They can also go to the big lottery for some match funding. And as I mentioned, we will be a match funder of some of those projects. So it's a significant money for disability projects.
We look forward to see how that rolls out. But in terms of the earlier points as well, and you use the term integration, and then you're very concerned at the lack of collaboration, for want of a better phrase, between departments. And this committee, for example, is still undergoing a post-18 inquiry, particularly in the special needs. How do you involve that in it to ensure that, there's a lot of good programs within the department. How do you absolutely make sure that they're synchronised with one another to have the greatest output and effect on those most vulnerable marginalised in our community?
Well, you're right, Pat, it is my challenge, but we have some clear ideas. Interestingly, with the careers service, the fact that we have the resource there is one major advantage, and in some ways we would be going back to hard it was, as we sometimes do in the civil service, maybe more than 10 years ago, where you had a cohort of special needs careers advisors who worked very closely with what was the disability employment advisors at the time. And through this strategy, one of the objectives I have is actually to reintroduce that model. So you would have dedicated careers advisors who worked across the various regions with mainstream and special education needs schools. They would have a caseload of young people who required special and additional support, and they would work then hand in glove with the employment officers that we would recruit into the system. So we would have a clear entry point into some of the other transitional services that we have responsibility for, particularly the FE and TFS programmes, but then we would allocate an employment officer who would track their progress from they enter until they're coming out and ready to engage in work activity.
Just a final point here in question. In terms of clearly to make a difference here, and there's a huge amount of investment in your time and the department's time on making a difference. What's the targets and what's the actual output you're expecting to come of delivering this disability strategy?
I'm going to be totally honest with you in terms of figures. Because we don't have a robust baseline, I do not know what our targets will end up being. I've made a commitment that by the first year of the launch of the strategy, we will have indicative targets of moving people with more significant disabilities into work, which will probably be based around what the sector are doing for those young people, along with what we're doing through our own specific programmes. The one thing I'm certain about, when you look at the participation levels of young people with disabilities and the likes of TFS, FE, their destination rates into employment are nowhere near as high as they could be. The FE pilot project that we engaged in, which is ongoing now, demonstrated that. In one campus, we moved from 2 people who had moved into employment the previous year to 12 in 1 year, and now that is now sitting at around 25 to 30 through the levers from last year. So it shows that you can make a significant difference. What we need to do is get the baseline figures and then work on them year in year.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Okay, Fra. Chair, thanks for the presentation, and again, David, your best wishes on your job. And I think Pat has already raised the issue of the inquiry that we're doing on the post-1910 special needs thing. And one of the things that we have learned through that is the major difficulties that people face, not only the people with disabilities, but the parents and the people that teach. And there seems to be a gap there between the department, the educational establishments, and how a young person progresses. To see when you're looking at I notice that there are a number of groups, or especially groups that deal with mental health issues. Do you ever get an opportunity to talk to groups of parents on how they feel and how they would see the progression of their young people getting into employment?
Yes, sir. In terms of the groups that we've engaged with, there's been various representatives to the department, correspondence from some of the parents, and I think at a previous committee meeting I was present when there was one of the parents' groups where there are. Through our engagement events, the regional engagement events, there were a number of parents who were there, parents and carers, along with their young people. And again, it only highlights for me why we need to do this departmentally, because as I was focusing on the employment aspect, we were only going to pick up those people who were already engaged in some of the training or educational services. By locking ourselves in with the careers advisors and the career service, we need to do a review, because it's the careers advisors who engage with these young people as early as year 9, and they then are part of the team that look at their transitional plan. Now, I don't want this strategy, and nor would I commit us to taking responsibility for that full transitional plan, because a lot of it moves into the area of social care and social services. But certainly when it comes to those young people who, between them and their parents, they genuinely think that it's a work or career, or at least further education that they want to achieve for the young people, then that's where that critical aspect of the strategy will come together. But we're very, very aware of the parents' groups, and particularly in terms of even respite. for themselves, and a lot of them having to come out of employment themselves because they fall through that gap after full-time education. That's one of the things I'm trying to address in this. But it's also to make sure that the people who are going to FE colleges are going to the FE college because it's the right place for them. And there might be a challenge then for other departments to step up the mark here, because there will be people who I know are going into FE college now, and it's maybe not the best fit, and they're in classes where they aren't at the same level as other disabled people, and they need something else as an alternative. So this is about creating a menu of choices for parents, as well as those that follow the our department.
Another question. And I know that obviously you talk about employers, you talk about a number of groups there. I think there's two questions. You find that you're pushing it at an open door when you meet employers, because I think one of the difficulties that we've picked up in the past is that many employers would have turned away from employing people with disabilities, and those that gain employment, is there a tracking mechanism to allow backup support and to determine how long they're in the job?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's no straightforward answer to either, particularly in the first one, but certainly in the second one, I'd say one of the advantages of the disability programmes is, one of our key objectives, unlike I suppose the mainstream employment service, is about sustained employment. And two of the programmes that we deliver, our two flagship programmes, like Access to Work and Workable, is about providing in-work support, sometimes indefinitely, but the aim is for it to be for that support to, if you like, reduce over a period of time. Workable as it sits, and it's specifically aimed at this target group again because it's those with more significant disability-related barriers, particularly mental health and learning disability. We average around 5 years of in-work support, by which time the employers become accustomed to it, the individual feels comfortable, but in some cases we'll provide that throughout the duration of the career. So certainly in-work support will be a major piece that we will want to build on. In terms of employers, that's why employers is one of the key themes. Employers are becoming better, I must say. They're becoming more educated, but there's still a lot of prejudice and misconceptions out there. So it is a case of not only educating employers about how good disabled employees can be, but also what supports we have in place. Sometimes it's their lack of knowledge of what we can actually provide for them from a department point of view that puts them off. Once they experience it, we find that they're sold, because usually those people that we've gone through the specialist recruitment exercises, the feedback from the employers is not only can the people do the job, but they're some of their best performers, they're the most loyal, committed, and they really appreciate the opportunity being given.
See, it just was, Chair, just one final point. Was it noticed in the slides you talked about the bail provision at local offices, and you did recognise that it's fairly daunting for people going to them. And I know that I've dealt with people that sometimes that barrier can put people on. What can be done to ensure that it's friendlier, that it's welcoming, and that people feel comfortable getting into them?
Yeah, well, certainly the recruitment of the specialists allows us much greater flexibility. Those staff will be very mobile, and will often work hand in hand with the disability sector organisations. So I would envisage a situation whereby those meetings with the young disabled people would take place in the likes of the Now Project or the Orchardville Society premises, which, as you say, are less daunting, don't have any benefit connotation to them. So that's again one of the advantages. Even our condition management programme, one of the successes of that model is that it's delivered by and large in community facilities as opposed to either health or JBO environments.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and welcome. I would like more information on the initiative that you had earlier this year, the Joint Employer Conference with the Equality Commission and Employers for Disability in Belfast City Council. How can that apply to areas west of the Bann?
Yeah. Well, certainly that was a classic case of we have ongoing and very positive relationships with the likes of Employers for Disability and the Equality Commission. We're often the key driver for a lot of these events. In this case, Belfast City Council came on board and they have been fantastic and even the opportunities they've allowed for people with disabilities over the last couple of years. If I think about an initiative that we took forward in Derry last year with Premier Inns, and again it was a classic case. We got one employer who was willing to engage. We brought the local disability organisations on board, Disability Action, NCAP, Action Mental Health, and then the department facilitated all of the accommodation issues, which resulted actually in 3 disabled people gaining employment in the new hotel on the water side. So it is happening all over. And it's simply, the good thing about the sector and the department is that we have a presence in every region. So, I don't see that as being a major problem for us. It's about identifying the opportunities. You'll be aware of Young Consistency as well. We've started to do some really progressive work with Park and Nore, and we've had now 2 employer events in Park and Nore College where we've invited a cohort of employers. The Board of Trustees are on board, and a lot of them have influence with local employers, and we see that as a way to go.
Okay. Have you got any plans to roll out this initiative, say, for example, in conjunction with the new Mid-Ulster Council?
Well, there's no doubt the councils will be major players in this. Belfast City Council have given us a bit of a model to work on. Obviously, we need for the new councils to be up and running in terms of their structure and operational capacity. But the whole idea of having employers as a theme, it'll focus to think about what is it we do differently with employers in future that we maybe haven't done. It's been maybe a bit too piecemeal and almost waiting on a recruitment opportunity arising. I think there is some things we can learn from their jurisdictions, and the Disability Confident campaign, which is running in GB at the moment. Whilst I wouldn't absorb all of it, there are definitely some things there that are very, very worthwhile, including both local and then maybe perhaps a major annual event where it's not about the department telling other employers how good this could be. It's actually about the employer champions coming on board and speaking from their own experience.
So you are being proactive with employers in terms of looking at initiatives to get young people with disabilities into employment?
Yeah. I mean, even the Youth Employment Scheme, we have built in flexibilities for young people with disabilities around the hours that they can work and the qualifications that they need to gain during that first year. That those have been, very heavily relaxed.
Okay. No other indications? Well, thank you for coming along to the committee again this morning and giving us your briefing and taking the questions.
Thank you.
Very much. So, have you had some mention to from We're moving on to a briefing from Steps to Success, Reading Partnership. And again, committee, you'll get the briefing paper at page 123 of your pack and at page 134 and page 139. Can I welcome our delegation here with us today to brief the committee. We'll give you up to 10 minutes to speak to the committee and brief them on your presentation, and then we will open it up for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. We're glad to be here. I'm Martin Fallon. I'm the Managing Director of Reading Partnership, and I'm joined today by two colleagues, Roderick Thomas, who's our Director of Business Development, and Christine Shaw, who is our Supply Chain Manager. During the past 16 years, we've built a reputation as a trusted provider of welfare to work services. We started back in 1998, supporting long-term job seekers into work in a particularly deprived area of London. We're a medium-sized company with 355 staff. We take a work-first approach on employment services. That means our discussions with participants will always centre around overcoming barriers and getting into work. As part of the Reed Group, with 50 years' experience of working with employers and meeting the needs of those employers, including since 1995 in Northern Ireland. We've used our experience and that of our supply chain to create a personalised Steps to Success service that will meet the needs of participants in Southern Region.
Okay, so our supply chain is made up of 4 end-to-end providers. Network personnel, who will be delivering for us in Omagh, Magherafelt and Cookstown. Rutledge Training, who will be covering Fermanagh. GEL, which is Global Education, will be covering Dungannon. And CERC will be covering Downpatrick, Kilkeel, Newcastle and Ballynahinch. Our end-to-end providers were selected through an extensive 2-stage expression of interest process. There was a variety of selection criteria, but in the main we were looking for organisations who had experience of working with a wide range of clients, such as those who will be referred to Steps to Success. And secondly, those organisations who demonstrated high levels of quality service with high performance on mandatory programmes. In addition to our 4 end-to-end providers, we'll be working with a range of specialist providers, and our specialist providers will be giving the support to clients that the end-to-end providers may not necessarily have themselves. So an example of some of these organisations include UCEL, SES, which is Supported Employment Solutions, a consortium of 7 disability organisations, Global Horizon Skills, and Northwest Academy, who will be providing us with ESOL support. In addition, we will be working with organisations who can offer advice such as Simon in terms of housing, Simon Community, NIACRO and Addiction NI. Also, in addition to these organisations, our partnership manager will be working with other local voluntary and community organisations to ensure that participants to the programme receive the best possible fully rounded service available to them.
Our delivery model slide provides a snapshot really of the interventions that we'll provide to participants on the Steps to Success programme. We developed our delivery model through engagement with our supply chain partners and also based on our experience of delivering successful welfare to work programmes for the past 16 years. We also undertook a lot of engagement with local community organisations, such as local enterprise partnerships and also local authorities, a survey of unemployed people, and then also linked into the employers that we work with in Northern Ireland already, and with employer organisations such as the CBI. So moving through the delivery model, at the initial sort of referral and induction stage, our employment advisors will telephone the participants to book in a suitable time for the appointment. They'll then receive a welcome pack setting out our service guarantees and essentially what the participants will gain from participating in the programme. At that initial appointment, the participant will undergo a really detailed diagnostic assessment, and it's the diagnostic assessment that really forms the foundation of what will happen to the participant whilst on the programme. The diagnostic will look at things such as their current circumstances, their previous experience and qualifications, motivation and confidence, job goals, and then specifically for people on ESA and JSA claimants with a health barrier, we'll carry out a detailed health and work assessment. All of that will lead into a personalised employment plan, and from there the participant will move into what we call our work focus support, and that's a sort of 3-step model. The first stage, particularly for people on ESA and people with health barriers, they'll spend some time overcoming those issues, either with referral to our specialist partners, some of our in-house provisions, such as our occupational psychologist, and also by spending time with our employment advisors to discuss suitable roles given their health needs. The second stage of our model is very much about the interventions we provide, such as employability training, IT support for people who may find applying for jobs online difficult, work experience, and also vocational training. Our advisors will be trained in providing support with personal barriers, such as debt advice, which we know can be a barrier for some people accessing work. And then finally, when people who have gone through that support and interventions become ready for work, we'll provide interventions around job search support, help with interview skills and teamwork. And on this slide, we provide just a sort of quick example. I know we are pushed for time with a customer and the barriers that would have been identified during their diagnostic assessment, and then the type of interventions that they would receive whilst on the programme. Turning to what happens when people do then find work, we recognise that this can be a difficult transition point, particularly for people who may have very little experience of employment. Our advisors will undertake a pre-work interview to help address issues such as travel routes into work and timekeeping. We've made provision as well to support people with some of those initial costs of returning to work, such as interview calls and travel costs for the first few weeks. But recognising the kind of policy imperative around sustainability in the moves from steps to work to steps to success, we will have a 12-month in-work support provision provided by employment advisors, and then also at 6 months to help career progression, there will be a review with the advisor and the participant to ensure that issues such as further training and also discussions around pay and career progression can take place, because we know from our experience that often customers will need to increase their hours and also have discussions around what future promotion opportunities may be available. Looking at our service offer, this kind of provides an overview really of the things that we believe are really important in terms of delivering a successful programme. It's important to state that we will provide a consistent service across the Southern region, and that will be ensured through constant monitoring and reporting against our service guarantees, and also through a one-team approach with Reed and our supply chain delivery, ensuring that vacancies, resources and best practice is shared across the supply chain. In terms of, as Martin mentioned, our delivery is very much based around a work-first approach, with all our activities designed to help move participants closer to and into employment. That means that every participant will have a dedicated employment advisor. They leave their first appointment with identified job goals and have a better off calculation to show them the financial benefits of returning to work. We know from our experience that the success of the programme is hugely reliant on the support provided by our employment advisors. Reed is a matrix accredited organisation which recognises the quality and standard of the information, advice and guidance we provide. Our advisors undertake a very detailed induction process, and as part of that undertake qualifications in information, advice and guidance to make sure they have the right skills to support participants. And then also we have a dedicated curriculum development team who create qualifications and non-accredited training which responds to employer needs, so we can quickly address any skills or training gaps that emerge. And then also, we know that self-employment will be a critical aspect to the success of this programme. Our advisors are trained in helping people address the initial steps to self-employment, and then we have specialist advisor support to help people make that transition as they begin trading. We have put a slide in identifying some of the specific, one of the specific training interventions that we've developed, which is around 3G, where we help increase someone's mindset and aptitude for returning to work. And we can provide some more information on that in the questions and answer sessions. I'll now pass across to Christine, who will talk through our employer offer.
Okay, so Reed is the UK's most recognised recruitment brand. We have over 50 years' experience of meeting the needs of employers, and we'll have recruitment managers working across the contract package area. Work is already underway with employers, the purpose of which has been threefold. Firstly, introducing ourselves within the area. Secondly, awareness raising of steps to success. We are aware employers may be used to the current and existing programme Steps to Work, so this is new to them, and we're keen to highlight the differences. And thirdly, we've been very keen to identify how we can support them with their recruitment needs, be that through careful screening or preparation of participants, rather than sending them lots of participants for a particular interview if they're not well matched. Our aim is to be the employer's recruiter of choice. We've contacted a large number of employers to date, and work is ongoing.
Okay, in summary, work first. We put work first and we expect participants to do the same. we talk about barriers in the context of finding work. We're committed to Steps to Success. It's a great opportunity to develop our business in a new region. We hope this is the start of a long relationship and presence in Northern Ireland. We're committed to work with the department to implement the contract successfully and to deliver the high performance that's required. And we're committed to improving the Northern Ireland economy by helping unemployed people improve their chances of finding and sustaining employment. And to that end, we've invested in infrastructure here to deliver the contract successfully. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you, what are your percentage targets for getting people into work during the course of this programme?
We have a detailed set of targets provided by the department. I think 92 different targets in all for each category, and we can certainly make those available to the committee.
92%?
No, sorry, 92 different categories.
92, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we have targets for each of the different customer groups, such as JSA 1824, and then targets for Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Year 4, which include job entry, 3-month sustainment, 6-month, 9-month, and 12.
Yeah, I'm just looking at I'm just looking at some stuff within the pack here, and it says that out of 32,600 who were referred to the company, 6,450 achieved a job outcome, given a percentage rate of 21%. Do you not think that's rather low?
Sorry, which figures do they relate? Sorry, which programs do they relate to?
Pardon?
I wonder if you might repeat the question, because I'm not sure which figures these.
Yes, from our research paper.
Yeah, from our research paper, that we got done here, I see where.
I think it's a work program in West London, isn't it? Is it the work?
Yeah.
West London.
That was London, but of 32,600 who referred to your company, 6,450 achieved a job outcome, which was a percentage rate of 21%. Now, do you not think that that's a fairly low percentage of getting people off employment or off benefits and into employment?
Were that to be the final conversion rate for the programme, yes, it would be low. It depends what period that relates to, but our current work programme performance in this current year and in the rolling year sees us ahead on all of our targets that have been set with the Department of Work and Pensions.
Yeah, well, I suppose what we can do as a committee is send on the research paper to you folk that we have here. But, you know, I would like to think that coming in to deliver a programme here in Northern Ireland, that, you know, the percentage of people getting into employment would be more than 21%.
The point I was making is that the way the work programme's results were measured required almost 18 months of the programme's for the programme to work for almost 18 months before the job outcomes became counted.
Yeah.
On our previous contracts, employment zone contracts, which were the precursor to the work programme, our average on those contracts was between sort of 36 and 44% when the programme was concluded. And that's sort of the standard that has seen us across some of our current contracts now, which are just coming to conclusion.
Fair enough. Bronwyn?
Okay, thank you, Chair. And I should declare an interest. I'm a board member of Dungannon Enterprise Centre. Can I ask regarding opportunities in the self-employment element of it, what engagements you have had with Dungannon and Fermanagh Enterprise Centre, which is in my constituency, a largely rural area, as I'm sure you're aware?
Certainly, I'll take that question, Roman. Obviously, the local enterprise agencies would be under my umbrella as the supply chain manager. Now, the self-employment journey on Steps to Success is somewhat different from what it is currently on Steps to Work. So what we've been doing is continuing to engage. I personally have been engaging with Denise, Marta and John Tracy at Fermanagh Enterprise in terms of seeing how we can work together and how we can link up with this new programme, because it obviously will need to be somewhat different from the current Steps to Work arrangement. This has actually involved a number of meetings over the last year or so to make sure they're aware of who we are, what our delivery model looks like, and also really making them aware as to the changes in the programme as well, because obviously some of them have been running Steps to Work for a number of years and they've been used to a programme working in a certain way. We're unable to work with these providers as on an end-to-end basis, but we're still keen very much to link in with them, and indeed we will be doing so, because part of the Steps to Success programme involves the Regional Start initiative, which most of the LEAs operate themselves or run themselves. On behalf of Investa and I. So we'll still need that relationship building, but I know for a fact that GEL, who'll be operating in Dungannon, and Rutledge in Fermanagh already have existing very good links with the local enterprise agencies in their area, so we very much want to pursue relationships with them. At this time, we're just not able to define exactly what they're going to be looking like.
Right, okay, thank you for that. I noticed on the internet you had carried out a research report on the costs of moving from benefits into employment. So these are old figures dating back 2011, 4,000 long-term job seekers moved from benefits into employment, and it stated that 96% of those needed financial support. Did you carry out any such research reports here for the North? And given the fact that there is an issue to do with affordable childcare, in particular rural areas, have used the means to, are you able to bridge that gap for people going into employment?
Yeah, if I pick up the research report, we know from our experience that often when you've been unemployed for a long time, you don't have the savings to actually start back in work. That's why we've put a provision within our own budget to provide support to participants with that transition. And it's a key aspect really of us helping someone into a job and making sure that they then sustain for the length of time that they'll need to on this programme, which is a key sort of policy driver. Christine, do you want to pick up the childcare?
Certainly in terms of childcare and travel will remain as is in Steps to Work, in that it will be reimbursed back to the participants. From our point of view, we don't want to make it difficult for a participant to attend an appointment. It's in our best interest to make sure that the participant fully engages and are able to engage. So if we can do something flexible in terms of what time they need to be within the office, we'll be working with them along those lines and doing everything we can to support them along their journey, because we understand things like childcare and travel have to be taken into account.
And we've previously very successfully run voluntary single-parent programmes in England and Scotland, so we know about how to go about approach employers for child-friendly hours, etc. Where I think, Martin, on those contracts we were very successful. We were the best provider in GB in terms of achieving sustained job entry and sustained job outcomes on those single-parent contracts.
Okay, Phil.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks for the presentation. How much is Read in Partnership planned to earn from the Steps to Success scheme?
That will largely depend on our results. It is a payment by results contract, and the two factors are both in terms of the referrals to the programme, which are indicated, confirmed, and how well we do on the programme.
Can you give me a rough figure?
Very difficult to establish exactly. We would anticipate successfully meeting the targets in the 4 years of the programme, but it's difficult to establish at this stage what sort of profit we would make from doing.
Well, what sort of a rough figure are you talking about? Are you talking about hundreds of thousands, or are you talking about millions? Or?
Well, to be indicative on this, in the 16 years that we've been in operation, our return on investment after tax has worked out in 16 years at 2.8%. So that may give you an indication. We're not in this sector to profiteer. We're here to deliver a service, and I hope that gives you some indication of the sort of margins that we're working to.
So what do you have to spend money on? Property,
People, the services, the development of the services, the systems that we use, a whole range of things that support the service that we deliver.
Right. How many staff have you got directly employed here?
52 will be employed by us, and then our supply chain
Is a further 47.
So you have recruited 52 people since this scheme started?
Yes. Well, sorry, let me correct myself there. 27 have already been recruited. By January, we will have 52 people working. There's a ramp up over the period.
And there's a number of senior positions that I've seen previously advertised, that of an operations manager and a Northern Ireland director. And from what I've seen in the job advertisements, their annual salary is about £60,000 a year. Is that a salary, or is that performance-related pay?
No, we intend to pay in the top quartile for all of the positions that we are recruiting for. There is no performance-related pay element involved in what we do.
For any of your staff?
No.
Okay. In terms of the figures that Tom referenced, they don't really inspire confidence. Are you hopeful that you'll perform better here? Is there differences within the work programme and the steps to success scheme that make you think that the performance return you have here in terms of getting people into work placement will improve?
There are differences. I mean, I'd just like, if I may, to go back to the figures. Are what I was trying to indicate are incomplete in terms of the time frame for the work programme. The work programme is still going, and more people are going into work. There's a lead time between people going into work and them actually being counted as a job outcome. So at the beginning of the work programme, there was a massive influx of referrals which had to work its way through. We are extremely confident with Steps to Success that we will meet and indeed exceed the targets that have been set for us by the department.
Right. Well, one of the problems we face here is that we have a highly skilled workforce that can't get employment. So you have things like graduates going to work in a retail store on a 0-hour contracts at very low pay with no security. How can we be assured as a scrutiny committee that public money won't be used to subsidise large retail stores giving people low-paid casual jobs through this scheme?
We're committed to managing the skills and potential of the participants on the programme with the needs of the employers we work with. We can't create jobs, obviously, but we can actually prepare people most effectively. I know some of the committee members have been concerned, from what I've read, about the possibility of churning. Now, churning is of no value to us, and putting people overqualified into jobs that you know from the beginning are not going to sustain is not in our interest and not in theirs. We'd lose faith with the people that we were there to support. So,
but is it not in your interest in terms of hitting your target?
I don't think we would hit our targets if we tried to shoehorn people, highly qualified people, into 0 hours contracts, as you say. What we will do, and it may be in certain, because this is a personalised service, it may suit a particular individual to start at the first rung of a ladder. We're not saying we're going to ignore the entry-level jobs, but we certainly won't be shoehorning people who are overqualified into.
So you're giving us a guarantee that your members of staff and people through the supply chain won't be getting people into job, regardless of what the quality of the job is, regardless of their skills and qualifications?
Yes, I'm confident that I can say we won't.
I think an important aspect as well is, as an organisation, we started the Reed Group originally around recruitment of employers, and we are very much about building long-term relationships with employers. If we put people into jobs with employers who only stay there for 3 or 4 weeks, the cost to the employer of that is significant, and we will lose the future vacancies that arise from those opportunities. So if you look on our current performance, it is very much about long-term relationships with employers and matching the right people into the right jobs, and that's the basis on which our mainstream recruitment business functions.
You've actually brought me on to my final question here, which is my big concern about your organisation being given this contract, is the fact that you're a private company that delivers these programmes, but you're also affiliated with a recruitment company. So is there any safeguards put in place to make sure that public money isn't subsidising Reed to carry out basic recruitment activities, so that somebody going through the Steps to Success scheme isn't being placed in a job opportunity that's been advertised through Reed, and in effect your company or companies are being paid twice?
I can give you an undertaking that that hasn't happened and won't happen going forward. Reed in Partnership stands alone. I mean, we are a separate organisation from the recruitment company, as sort of distant cousins, if you like. The Reed name does open doors to us, there's no question about that because of the brand awareness, but there is no direct link in terms of fulfilling employer needs through Reed recruitment. So I can give you an
So you won't give them preferential treatment in terms of filling vacancies and things like that?
No, definitely not.
Right, thanks for that.
Okay, Phil, right, Pat?
You're very welcome. I suppose from the membership of this committee and generally the MLAs were coming from a perspective where we've seen in our local community contractors, we've seen in our local community subcontractors testimony to good practices where there was consistency, there was continuity, and they were meeting very successfully on the whole the targets set by the department. So when we became aware of a process that now leads to what in essence is the exclusion of any local leading contractors, it does cause us concern. So given that your area geographically is probably Mid-Ulster, west of the Ban, higher levels of unemployment, over the last number of years, higher levels of companies going bust, small contractors going bust, higher levels of economic inactivity, convince me you're going to do this job better than the contractors who were doing it under Steps to Work.
Okay, I mean, first, perhaps it might be useful, Christine, to talk about the way we've selected our supply chains. We've got a blended delivery here.
The expression of interest process was open to any provider within the Southern CPA. As mentioned previously, it was an extensive process. It was a two-stage process, and certainly every organisation was measured against set criteria. We've talked about really our interest was, again, experience in dealing with a wide range of client groups. We've got young people who are going to be referred to Steps to Success, ESA clients, so we were looking for that kind of experience, and also proof that they'd actually perform well on other programmes, particularly mandatory programmes. So that was really, they gave us the assurance in terms that we have a very strong supply chain of existing, in fact, a few of them were actually lead contractors under the current Steps to Work programme.
Okay, question asked to another company. How many contractors that you presently are going to use were under Steps to Work? How many have lost out?
In terms of job losses?
Both in terms of subcontractors and also in terms of jobs?
We're not aware of any job losses within the organisations that we've been working
Steps
with.
to Work?
With Steps to Work, we've actively been engaging with the existing providers of Steps to Work in relation to TUPE, so that if there are any staff who are potentially working on Steps to Work who may face a potential job loss, that we get their TUPE information so that we can start engaging with those employees, because obviously we want to do everything we can to prevent job losses.
But at this stage, you must have an idea how many employees you need and how many employees there is existingly under the contractors or subcontractors on Steps to Work.
We believe there's a total of 17 employees who may be covered by the TUPE regulations, and we have left provision within our recruitment to accommodate those in our subsequent recruitment phases that go on until January. So at the moment, there is, as we speak at this moment, no reason, no one has lost their job, and there is no intention to create a set of circumstances where that happens.
Well, that's reassuring for some of the people. I must say I was interested in your quote, which might come back to haunt you. You're going to meet and exceed the targets set by the department. I've seen some of the department's movement in the public gallery when you said that. So, can you convince me of doing that?
Well, there are challenges with any programme, and the challenges are part of an equation. There are the participants in the programme, and there are employers. Our purpose is to ensure that we can bring the two together in a meaningful way, increasing the confidence and skills of the participants in the programme, and working with a sufficient number of employers on a continuous basis to make that happen. We, at this business, with many others, is very dependent on management information and being on top of what you're doing, so that you're not in a situation where at the end of a year you say, we've missed our target. We need to be on top of what we're doing all the time, to have an expectation of what we need to achieve at any given period, and if we're not achieving it, to do something about it. And doing something about it is about addressing where pinch points are occurring. Do we need more of this resource here? Do we need different interventions to the one we've got? But it's being on top of the programme and working at it to get optimum results right the way through the lifetime of the contract. This is, if you like, a starting point, but it's ongoing, and we need to be responsive and relevant to a changing economy.
Okay, we look forward to the progress on it, and we wish you well on it. My final point, Chair, you made reference to a survey of unemployed people in the geographical area. How were those identified? What was the purpose of it? What was the outcomes of it? And given that we've just heard from the department leading on to a disability strategy that they're bringing forward, given the high levels of disability and learning disability, is there targets that you have for that particular area as well to get meaningful work?
Through our sister company, Read.co.uk, they have a large number of people registered on their jobs website, registered in Northern Ireland. So we used that as a vehicle to collect some information. A lot of it was quantitative information, really, about what people see as their own personal barriers, which helped to kind of cement some of the things that you'll see in the delivery model slide around the specific interventions for people with digital inclusion. So a lot of the people came back and said, actually, one of the things that would benefit was how you send a CV online, how you develop a CV, etc. And that's one of the things then that's obviously factored into the services that we provide. Though, as Martin said, what we would aim to see is actually the services that we provide will evolve. We have a very detailed process within our contracts for collecting evaluation of survey responses from our participants, and that's an active process of ensuring that we are capturing best practice and continuous improvement through our own delivery.
So could you come back to me, Chair, clearly have a personal and political interest hugely in disability issues, particularly for young people with learning disabilities. Could you come back to me at a later stage telling me how you're engaging with that sector to effectively, hopefully, gain them employment opportunities?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Fra.
Sure, and I'll be brief. I think that one of the other successful companies that said to us that the breakdown of the resources would be 60% spent here and 40% spent in England or wherever their base is. What way does that break down with yourselves?
I think we have 3 people who will be based in Liverpool. The rest will be based in Northern Ireland.
So all the telephone connections, all the thing will all be
here.
Based there?
Yes.
See, when people talk about sustainable, people get into employment, sustainable employment. How does that work out? Is it 6 months, 12 months, 18 months?
It's up to 12 within the terms of the contract. But obviously what one is hoping to do during that period is support people in a way that enables them to carry on beyond that. But contractually, it's for 12 months.
And see, when the chair spoke earlier on about statistics there, and I think it was 21,000.
21%.
21%. How many of those, have you done any analysis of those 21% people who stayed in employment? Have they left? Did they go into other employment?
We're running, Roger, you can correct me, around about 70 to 80% of those people are still in employment.
Unemployment, that's after 12 months?
Yeah, a number of people may go into 2 or 3 jobs, particularly one of the features of the labour market on our West London work programme contract is some people moving out of jobs and then moving into another job 3 or 4 weeks later, and we support them through that process. the work programme figures that you have, which are out of date in the sense of job outcomes, even those figures show that we are one of the best providers in terms of ensuring people, when they enter work, then sustaining work. And I think that comes from our experience really as a company in terms of placing the right people into the right jobs.
Part of sustainment may actually come from people having more than one job. Progression may come from getting started and then moving across, and we want to support people, if that's appropriate for them, to do that during that period as well.
We know that particularly for graduates, often they may need to take an entry-level job to start with. Part of our process then is using that to gain them some experience in the workplace, references which are often critical for employers, and then helping them progress into a more suitable role. And obviously every customer is different, but there are different routes into the ultimate job goal that people have, rather than just aiming to get them into that job straight away if they have no relevant work experience or references.
Okay, and perhaps we could provide the committee with update figures as to many, many are staying in employment after 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the indications for questions. So thank you very much for coming to the committee today and for your presentation and for taking the questions. And we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Lovely work.
Any other business, folk? No other business. The date and place of next meeting is next Wednesday, the 22nd, and it's taking place in Parkinore College in Dungannon at 10 a.m. So we'll see you all in there. I'm not be there.